The light hit me the moment the airlock opened, and my hand was already moving toward a weapon I had not been allowed to bring. I stopped myself. I breathed. I made my face calm. The chamber in front of me was huge and bright, built from white stone that glowed from the inside, and 1,000 voices were singing a soft welcome song. Floating ribbons of color drifted through the air like slow rivers. It was beautiful. It was warm. It was the kind of place that wanted you to relax. That was the first thing that worried me. My name is Elena Brooks. I am a commander in the Earth Fleet, though my real training was in something quieter than ships and weapons. I read people. I read rooms. I find the lie hidden under the smile. And I was sent here, alone, with no weapons and no fleet behind me, to walk into the heart of the most powerful group of worlds in the galaxy, and pretend I trusted them. The rules were simple. 1 human. No ship of our own at the docking ring. No tools that could harm. The Council called this the open hand. They believed that real peace could only happen when both sides showed they had nothing to hide. To them, a closed fist was the mark of a young and frightened species. They wanted me to come with my hands open. So I did. My hands were open. My mind was not. A tall figure floated down to meet me. It had long limbs, smooth gray skin, and eyes that were soft and round and kind. This was a member of the 7 voices, the 7 great delegates who spoke for the whole council. The song behind it grew louder for a moment, then settled. "Commander Brooks," it said, in a gentle voice that my translator turned into perfect English. "You honor us. We have waited a long time for the day a human would stand in this hall as a friend, and not a stranger." "The honor is mine," I said, and I bowed at the exact angle my briefing had taught me. Not too low, not too proud, just right. The delegate seemed pleased. It told me its name was Saul, the voice of the Aluan people, and that it would guide me through the days ahead. I memorized the way it moved. I memorized the slight pause before it spoke, the way it tilted its head when it listened. I memorized everything, because that is what I do. We won a war to get here. I want to be clear about that. A few years ago, a fleet from the edge of Council space pushed into our region of the stars. They were faster than us, better armed, and far more experienced. By every measure we should have lost. We did not. We were stubborn, we were clever, and we refused to break. When the dust settled, the larger power pulled back, and the whole galaxy turned to look at the strange new species that had refused to fall. The Council saw that, and decided we were worthy of diplomacy, worthy of an invitation. They sent us this glowing welcome, this offer of friendship, this seat at the table of the great worlds. My commanders saw the same thing, and decided something else entirely. I remembered the briefing room back home. Cold metal, dim light, a long table. Admiral Hartley sat at the head of it, an old man with gray hair and a stare that could cut steel. He had spent 40 years watching the stars, and he did not trust a single thing that came out of them. Every species that smiled at us first, he told me, tried to put a blade in our back second. Every single one. The friendly ones are the most dangerous, because the friendly ones get close enough to do real damage. He slid a folder across the table. "You are not going there to make peace, Elena. You are going there to be our eyes. You watch. You listen. You find the trap before it closes. And when it comes, because it will come, you make sure we are the ones still standing." I had asked him then, just once, "And if there is no trap? If they really mean it?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Then you will have wasted a few months being careful. I can live with that. What I cannot live with is the other way around." There had been one more thing he said, just as I rose to leave. He did not look at me when he said it. He looked at the wall, at an old picture of Earth hanging there, small and blue and alone. "There are 9 billion people on that rock, Commander. They do not know your name. They never will. But every one of them is counting on you to be the kind of person who does not believe a pretty song." He nodded once. "Go and be exactly that." So here I was, careful, smiling, open hands, closed mind, in a hall full of singing strangers, carrying 9 billion people I would never meet. Saul guided me deeper into the station. It was called the Concorde, and it was less a station than a small moon, a vast white shell turning slowly in the dark. As we walked, Saul showed me the wonders of it. gardens that grew in midair, pools of liquid light, long windows that looked out on 7 different home stars at once, gathered together by some technology I did not understand. And while my eyes admired all of it, another part of my mind was counting. I counted the exits. There were fewer than there should have been for a hall that size. I counted the guards, though they were dressed as helpers and did not carry visible weapons. I counted the seams in the walls where panels could open, and I marked the places where the glowing stone went dark, because darkness in a place built to glow meant something was hidden there. "You are quiet, Commander," Saul said. "Most new friends ask many questions." "I am taking it in," I said. "Your home is so beautiful that words feel too small." That pleased it again. It was easy to please, this one. I did not let that lower my guard. Easy to please could be honest. It could also be a trained habit, a way to make a guest comfortable so the guest stopped watching. We came at last to the great chamber of the 7 voices. 7 raised seats stood in a wide circle, and on 6 of them sat the delegates of 6 different species. Tall ones, short ones with too many limbs, one that seemed to be made of slowly turning crystal. The 7th seat, I would learn, was being kept open for me, for the day humanity formally joined. They greeted me one by one. I bowed to each. I learned their names and their worlds, and the small signs of their bodies that told me whether they were calm or tense. Most were calm. Most were warm. The crystal one spoke in chiming tones and called me a welcome storm. A short, round delegate with 4 soft eyes pressed a cool palm to my forehead, which I was told was a blessing among its people, and I let it, though every instinct in me hated being touched by a stranger. One delegate was not like the others. The delegate of the Vask sat slightly forward in its seat, watching me with more attention than the rest. Its skin was a deep shade of green, and it had a wide mouth that curved up at the corners in something that looked too much like a human grin. Its name was Karan. When it greeted me, it leaned in close, lowered its voice, and said something the others did not say. "We have heard so much about you, Commander. A species that wins when it should lose. A species that does not break. How interesting you must be on the inside." I smiled back. "I am afraid I am rather boring on the inside." "No," Karan said softly. "I do not think you are boring at all." I filed that away. Our analysts back home had flagged the Vask months ago, long before this invitation arrived. They were one of the newer members of the council, ambitious, fast-rising, and a little too eager. Nothing we could prove, just a pattern, a shape in the data, the kind of shape that makes a careful person uneasy. And here was their delegate, leaning in closer than anyone else, looking at me like I was a puzzle it wanted to solve. The welcome went on for hours. There were speeches, there were gifts, there was food that my body could safely eat, prepared specially for me, which meant they had studied human biology in detail before I ever arrived. I noted that too. You do not learn what a stranger can eat, unless you have been planning their visit for a long time. When the ceremony finally ended, Saul showed me to my quarters. They were generous, soft, and full of small comforts. A bed shaped for a human, a window, a bowl of fruit that grew on a world 1,000 light years away. "Rest, Commander," Saul said at the door. "Tomorrow the true work begins. Tomorrow we begin to build the bridge between your people and ours." "I look forward to it," I said. The door closed. I was alone. I did not rest. First I walked the room, slowly, my fingers brushing every surface. I was looking for listening devices, and I found 3, hidden in places a careless guest would never check. I did not remove them. Removing them would tell my hosts that I had found them, and I would rather they believe I was careless. Instead, I learned where they were, so that I would know which words in this room were safe and which were not. Then I went to the window. I stood there a long time, looking out at the 7 gathered stars, and I let my mind go over everything I had seen. The beauty was real. The warmth was real. The welcome song still echoed faintly in my ears. By every sign, these were a gentle people who wanted nothing but to share their galaxy with us. And yet, the open hand bothered me. A rule that says you must give up your defenses to be trusted is not a rule made by people who trust. It is a rule made by people who want something. I did not yet know what they wanted, but Admiral Hartley's voice was in my head, steady and cold, telling me that the friendly ones get close enough to do real damage. I reached into the lining of my jacket, to a thread that was not a thread, and I pulled it free. It was a tiny device, smaller than my smallest fingernail, built so well that no scan on this station would ever find it. A dead drop. A way to send a single quiet message home, hidden inside the normal noise of the station's own systems, where no one would think to look. I pressed it once. The message it sent was short. It said only that I had arrived, that the welcome was warm, and that one delegate among the 7 had watched me too closely and smiled too wide. It said, "Keep watching the Vask." Then I tucked the thread back into my jacket, lay down on the soft bed they had built for me, and stared at the ceiling until the 7 stars turned and the false morning came. The council expected diplomacy. They had built a whole hall of singing light to welcome it. I had come expecting something else, and I intended to be ready when it arrived. The next morning they showed me everything, and that was the moment I became certain they were lying. Saul came for me early, bright and gentle as ever, and led me through a day that was meant to amaze. We walked through halls where the council kept its great gifts of knowledge, and one by one they laid those gifts before me like a feast. Star charts that mapped safe paths through dangerous space, medical machines that could heal wounds we still called fatal, engines that folded distance in ways our scientists had only dreamed about. All of it, they said, would be ours the moment we joined. "This is the meaning of the open hand," Saul told me, sweeping a long arm across a room full of glowing data. "We hide nothing from a friend. What is ours becomes yours. What is yours becomes ours. There are no secrets among the voices, and so there can be no fear." I made my eyes go wide. I let my breath catch, the way a young species overwhelmed by wonder might. And inside, I was already taking it apart. Because here is the thing about a gift. A gift can be a kindness. A gift can also be a chain. When someone gives you a tool you cannot build yourself, you become dependent on the one who made it. When your medicine, your maps, and your engines all come from a single source, that source holds your life in its hand. They were not just showing me wonders, they were showing me how thoroughly I could be tied to them. So as Saul spoke, I sent every schematic home through the quiet thread in my jacket, piece by piece, hidden in the ordinary flow of the station. Not so my people could use the gifts, so my people could find the strings attached to them. Somewhere in all that generous data, I was certain, were the hooks. I wanted our engineers to find the hooks before we ever agreed to anything. They gave me a healing device to try, a small silver band that closed a cut on my hand in seconds. It was a marvel. I thanked them warmly. Then, alone that night, I took the band apart with the tiny tools hidden in my boot heel, and I found what I expected to find. Deep inside it was a small piece that did nothing for healing at all. It was a receiver. A way for the device to be told, from far away, to simply stop working. Every healing band, every engine, every gift, could be switched off by whoever built it. A galaxy that depended on these gifts was a galaxy that could be made helpless with a single command from somewhere else. I put the band back together exactly as it had been, so no one would know I had looked. But I had looked, and now I knew. The negotiations began the next afternoon, and they did not go the way the council expected. They expected gratitude. I gave them gratitude, but I gave them questions too. For every offer, I asked what it would cost. For every promise, I asked what would happen if the promise were broken. I would not sign even the smallest agreement without a clause that let us walk away. I read every line of every document twice, and then a third time, looking for the trap in the wording. It exhausted them. I could see it. These were people who had not truly negotiated in a very long time, because their whole system was built on the idea that no one needed to. Among the voices, you simply opened your hand and trusted the other to open theirs. My endless caution was like a foreign language to them, ugly and slow. The crystal delegate, whose name chimed as something close to Veer, lost its patience with me on the second day. Its chiming turned sharp and quick. "You ask and you ask and you ask," it said. "You have read this same agreement 4 times, Commander. The words do not change between readings. What is it you expect to find?" "I do not expect to find anything," I told it gently. "That is exactly why I keep reading. The day I stop expecting to find something, is the day something will be there. Vuyer could not understand that. None of them could. To them, reading a friend's words 4 times was almost an insult, a way of saying you did not believe them. To me, it was simply how a person stayed alive. We were speaking 2 different languages, and only one of us knew it. "You carry your war like a second skeleton," Saul said to me on the 3rd day, not unkindly. We were alone in a small garden, the listening devices far behind us, though I never assumed any place was truly private. "It is inside you, holding you up, but also weighing you down. You do not have to carry it here, Commander. Here you are safe. You may set it down." It was a beautiful thing to say. I almost believed that the one saying it believed it. "Maybe one day," I told it. "Old bones are hard to put down." What I did not say was that the second skeleton was the only reason my species was still alive. Every world that had set its bones down had been carried off in the night by something with a kinder smile. Saul tried, in its gentle way, to teach me to relax. It took me to a quiet pool of warm light and floated beside me, and told me about its own world, a place of soft rains and long, slow rivers, where its people had not raised a weapon against each other in 3,000 years. It spoke of peace, the way some people speak of a beloved child, with a tenderness so real it almost hurt to hear. And I believed it. I believed that the Eluan were exactly what they seemed, a kind and gentle people who had forgotten how to be afraid. That was what frightened me about them. A people who had forgotten how to be afraid would never see the knife until it was already in. They had not made the open hand to trap anyone. They were too innocent for that. But innocence builds traps without meaning to, and someone less innocent always comes along to use them. It was on the 4th day that I found the truth my admiral had sent me to find. I had been given access to the Council's records, as a sign of trust, as part of the open hand. They wanted me to see how clean and fair their system was. So I read, late into the false night, and I followed the rules of membership back through the histories of every species that had joined. And there it was, buried in old and gentle language, dressed up as transparency. Every member of the Council, upon joining, had handed over the master codes to its own defenses. The codes that armed and disarmed every fleet, every shield, every planetary guard. They called it sharing. They called it trust. The Council held these codes in a central core, supposedly so that no member could ever turn its weapons on another by surprise. But I am a careful person, and a careful person sees what a trusting person does not. Whoever held those codes did not just prevent war. Whoever held those codes could switch off the defenses of any member at any time. The whole Council, all these gentle singing worlds, had quietly handed a single hand the power to leave any of them defenseless in a heartbeat. The open hand was not trust, it was a leash. Every member wore one. And the price of our membership, the thing they would ask of me at the signing, was Earth's own master codes. The keys to our planetary defense grid, the one thing that had kept us alive when the galaxy came for us. They wanted us to put on the leash too. I read it 3 more times, the way Vuyer had mocked me for. The words did not change. They never do. I sat with that truth for a long time, alone in my quarters, my face calm in case of watchers, my heart very cold and very still. Admiral Hartley had been right. Of course he had been right. The friendly ones get close enough to do real damage, and here was the damage, written in soft words, waiting for my signature. But there was something the records did not explain, and it troubled me. If every member had worn the leash for 1,000 years without complaint, why did the air on this station feel so tense beneath its singing? Why did the panels go dark in places where they should have glowed? A leash that everyone had worn for 1,000 years should have felt old and settled. This one felt like it was about to be pulled. By someone. Soon. The next day, Koran found me. The Vask delegate had a way of appearing when no one else was near, and I had stopped believing it was chance. We were in a quiet corridor far from the great halls, and it leaned in close, its wide mouth curved up, its voice low. "You have read the records," it said. It was not a question. I read many things. "Then you have seen the leash." Koran's grin widened. "You are clever, Commander. Far too clever to put it on willingly. So I will offer you another path." I said nothing. I let it talk. Letting people talk is how you learn what they truly want. The Council is old and slow, Koran went on. It sings of trust while it holds every throat in its hand. But the codes in that core are not as safe as the old voices believe. There are those of us who have grown tired of the leash. When the moment comes, side with us. Refuse to hand over your codes. Stand with the Vask, and your Earth will keep its keys while the others lose theirs. So there it was, the shape our analysts had seen months ago, finally showing its full form. The Vask were not loyal members of this gentle council. The Vask were planning to take it, and they wanted humanity, the dangerous newcomer who refused to lose, standing on their side when they did. It was a test, of course, a way to see what I was made of. If I refused too quickly, Koran would know I was loyal to the council and could not be used. If I agreed too quickly, Koran would not trust me either, because no one trusts a stranger who turns on its hosts in a single breath. So I did neither. I let my face show a flicker of temptation, quickly hidden. I let my voice carry the smallest crack of doubt. That is a dangerous thing to say to a guest, I said quietly. It is a dangerous galaxy, Koran answered. I think you know that better than any of these singing fools. Think on it, Commander. The signing is soon. When the moment comes, you will have to choose, and I would rather you chose with open eyes. It drifted away down the corridor, leaving me alone with the weight of 2 betrayals now, not one. The council meant to leash us. The Vask meant to use us to take the council, and in the middle stood one human with open hands, smiling at everyone, trusting no one. I walked back to my quarters very slowly, and as I walked, a plan began to take shape in my mind. It was a cold plan, and a patient one, and it depended on letting both sides believe they were winning, right up until the last possible moment. It would be the hardest thing I had ever done, because it required me to walk willingly toward the very trap I had spent my whole life learning to avoid. That night I sent the longest message I had yet dared to send through the thread in my jacket. I told my people about the codes. I told them about the leash. I told them about the receiver hidden in the healing band, the proof that every gift could be switched off from far away. I told them about Koran's offer and the coming move against the council. I told them everything, hidden in the quiet noise of the station, a whisper traveling home across the dark. And then I waited. For 2 days I played my part. I smiled at Saul. I asked my careful questions. I let Koran believe I was thinking over its offer. I let the council believe I was being slowly won over by their wonders. I was a calm and pleasant guest, and inside I was a coiled spring, waiting for the word from home that would tell me which way to jump. It came on the second night. The thread in my jacket grew warm, just slightly, the sign of a message received. I held it in my palm in the dark, and read the reply my people had sent across all those light years. It was one word. Confirmed. That single word told me everything. It meant our engineers had found the hooks in the gifts. It meant our analysts had traced the Vask plot and judged it real. It meant the betrayal humanity had expected from the very first day. The betrayal we had been preparing for before I ever set foot in this hall of light was no longer a guess. It was coming. At the signing. And we were ready. I closed my hand around the thread and lay back on the soft bed they had built for me, looking up at the ceiling of this beautiful, lying place. The council expected me to come and join them with open hands. I had come to do something else entirely, and now I knew exactly when to do it. The signing was held in the great chamber of the 7 voices, and the whole galaxy was watching. They had made it a grand thing. The 7 raised seats stood in their wide circle, 6 of them filled, the 7th empty, and waiting for the moment a human would take it. The walls glowed brighter than I had ever seen them. The welcome song rose softly in the background, and around the edges of the chamber, hidden in the floating light, were relay points that carried this moment out to every member world of the Council. Hundreds of species, watching live, as humanity finally joined the great family of the stars. I had not slept. I had spent the long false night going over every step of what was to come, the way I had once gone over battle plans, except that this battle would be fought with no weapon at all, only with timing and nerve, and a single act of faith in a plan I could not undo once it began. I stood in the center of the circle, alone, in the plain dark uniform of the Earth Fleet. My hands were open and empty, as the rules required. My face was calm. My heart was very steady, because I had passed the stage of fear days ago, and come out the other side into something cold and clear. I let myself look, once, at the 6 delegates in their seats. Sol, gentle and proud. Vuer, the crystal one, chiming softly. The round one with 4 eyes, who had blessed me. 2 others I had come to know a little, both kind in their strange ways. And Corin, the Vask, sitting forward, very still, watching me the way it always watched me, waiting to see which way I would jump. I knew something none of them knew. I knew that within the hour, this beautiful chamber would become the place where the future of the whole galaxy turned, and that I would be the one to turn it. The weight of that sat on me like a hand pressing down between my shoulders. 9 billion people back home, hundreds of species watching, 6 gentle voices who did not know what was about to fall on them, and 1 thief who thought it had already won. There was a part of me, even then, that was afraid I had read it all wrong. That is the secret cost of being a careful person. You spend your whole life seeing knives and shadows, and most of the time the shadows are only shadows, and you never quite know, until the very last moment, whether this was the one time you were right, or the one time your fear had finally fooled you. If I had read the Vask wrong, if Quran did nothing, then I would step forward and upload a useless program into a sacred core in front of hundreds of worlds, insult the entire council, and likely end any chance my people ever had of peace. I would be the suspicious human who saw a betrayal that was never there, and broke everything because of it. I pushed the thought down. I had learned to push such thoughts down a long time ago. The facts were the facts. The receiver hidden in the healing band was real. The leash in the records was real. Corin's offer in the corridor was real. 3 separate facts, each one small, each one easy to explain away on its own, but together they formed a shape. And I had learned to trust the shape, even when every gentle thing around me whispered that I was wrong to. Trust the shape, I told myself. The shape has never lied to you. Pretty songs lie, shapes do not. Sol rose from its seat and floated forward to stand beside me. Its soft round eyes were warm. I think, even then, it truly believed this was a day of peace. Friends, it said, and its voice filled the whole vast chamber. For 1,000 years the voices have sung together. Today our song grows stronger. Today a young and brave people, a people who would not break, joins their voice to ours. Commander Brooks, on behalf of all the voices, I welcome you home. The song swelled, the light brightened. Across hundreds of worlds, hundreds of species leaned in to watch. In front of me, rising from the floor, was the core. It was a tall pillar of glowing crystal, the heart of the council's whole system, the place where the master codes of every member were kept. To complete the joining, I had only to step forward, place my hand upon it, and upload Earth's planetary defense codes into the core, joining our keys to all the others. It was supposed to be irreversible. Once given, the codes could never be taken back. That was the point. That was the leash, closing for good. I want to tell you about that moment, because it was the hardest moment of my life. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to do it. I had spent my whole career learning never to hand my keys to anyone, never to step into the open, never to give a stranger power over me. And now I was about to step forward and place my hand on the very thing I feared most, and begin handing it the keys to my entire world, in front of hundreds of watching species, with no way to take it back. My mouth had gone dry. My pulse was loud in my ears. For one long heartbeat I thought of my own world, small and blue and far away, of 9 billion people going about an ordinary day with no idea that one woman, alone, in a hall of singing light, was about to risk every one of them on a plan and a guess, and a cold reading of 3 small facts. If I was wrong, I was about to hand a real enemy the keys to all of them. If I was right, I was about to save more lives than I would ever be able to count, and there was no way to know which until it was already done. Trust the plan, I told myself. Trust the months of work. Trust the people back home who built this with you, the engineers who studied the hooks and the gifts, the analysts who traced the Vask, the admiral who looked at a picture of Earth and told you to be the kind of person who does not believe a pretty song. Trust the cold, clear thing inside you that has never once, in your entire life, been wrong about the knife. I stepped forward. I placed my hand on the cool, glowing surface of the core. On behalf of Earth, I said, my voice carrying across the chamber and out to all those watching worlds. I give what I was asked to give. I began the upload. Data flowed from the small device in my palm into the great crystal core. Long ribbons of light streamed up the pillar. The whole chamber seemed to hold its breath. Saul's eyes shone. The 6 delegates in their seats settled back, satisfied, certain. The dangerous newcomers had finally opened their hands. And in his seat, the Vask delegate Koran went very still. I saw it from the corner of my eye, the way it leaned forward, the way its wide grin tightened. It had given me my chance to choose, and I had not refused the upload. I had stepped forward and begun handing Earth's codes to the Council. In Koran's eyes, I had chosen the Council over the Vask. I had failed its test. So Koran stopped waiting. It happened fast, the way these things always do. Koran rose from its seat, and as it rose, 3 of the floating helpers around the chamber moved with it, and they were not helpers at all. In a single smooth motion they reached the core, and Koran pressed its hand against the crystal beside mine, and spoke a string of words in its own tongue that my translator did not bother to render. The light in the chamber changed color. The warm white turned to a hard, cold blue. Across the circle, the 6 delegates cried out. Saul spun toward the core, its calm shattering, because Koran had just done the thing the gentle voices believed impossible. It had reached into the core, into the heart of the open hand, and seized the master codes. All of them. Every leash the Council had ever held over its members. Every key to every fleet and shield and planetary guard. All of it now in the hand of the Vask. And the leashes pulled tight. Out across the watching worlds, fleets froze in place. Shields fell dark. Planetary defenses went silent, one after another, as Koran flipped the switches the Council had so carefully gathered into one place for the sake of trust. The relay images flickered with it. On 100 screens, 100 species watched their own ships go dead in the sky above their homes. The Vask had spent years burrowing quietly into the trust architecture of the Council, learning its secrets, waiting for the moment the core was open and active. The signing, with the core unlocked to receive a new member, was that moment. I had unlocked the door. Koran had walked through it. "You see now," Koran said, and its voice was no longer soft. It rang through the chamber and out across hundreds of worlds. "You see what your precious open hand truly was. A weapon, lying ready in the middle of the table, waiting for the first hand bold enough to pick it up. I thank the Council for gathering all your throats into one place. It made this so much easier." It turned slowly, taking in the frozen, silent worlds on every relay screen, drinking in the helplessness it had created. "For 1,000 years you sang of trust," Koran went on. "You called the Vask young and hungry. You smiled at us and told us to be patient, to wait our turn, to open our hand and trust the voices to be fair. Well, I have opened my hand, and look what was waiting inside it." The 6 delegates were frozen, helpless. Their fleets would not answer them. Their worlds lay open and undefended. Diplomacy, the only language they knew, had no word for this. They had built their whole civilization on the belief that no one would ever do what Koran had just done, and now that belief lay in pieces, and they did not know how to stand without it. Vire, the crystal delegate, was the first to find its voice, and its chiming was cracked and desperate. "This cannot be. The core is sacred. The codes are bound. They cannot be moved. The law forbids." "The law," Koran said, almost gently, "is a song you sang to each other to feel safe. It was never a wall. It was only ever a song. I have listened to you sing it for years, and the whole time I was learning the gaps between the notes. There are always gaps between the notes. You were all too busy singing to look down and see them." The round delegate with 4 soft eyes, the one that had blessed me on my first day, made a low sound of pure grief. "My world," it said. "My world has no shields now. My children sleep beneath an open sky, and there is nothing above them. Koran, please. Whatever you want, take it from me. Take my seat. Take my voice. Only give my world its sky back." "You should have thought of your sky," Koran said, 1,000 years ago, when you handed it to a stranger and called it trust. And that, I thought, watching it all, was the cruelest and truest thing the Vask had said, because it was right. They had all handed their skies to a stranger and called it trust, and now another stranger was simply collecting what they had so freely given away. Koran had not broken any law. It had only used, at last, the power they had all spent 1,000 years politely pretending no one would ever use. Saul turned to me, its eyes wide with horror and apology. "Commander, forgive us. We never thought. Your codes, they are in the core now too. Koran will take Earth's defenses along with all the rest. I am so sorry. I led you into this. I welcomed you home, and I have handed you to a thief." And here is the part I had been waiting for. Through every careful smile and every patient question, through every hour of being the slow and tiresome guest, through the longest night of my life, and the hardest single step I had ever taken. I did not panic. I did not pull my hand away from the core. I pressed it more firmly to the crystal, and I let the upload finish. The last ribbon of light flowed up the pillar. Earth's codes settled fully into the core, joining all the others, exactly as Koran wanted. Koran's grin widened in triumph. It thought it had just gained the defenses of Earth, the dangerous newcomer, the species that would not break, added to all the leashes it now held. It thought it had just taken the keys to my world along with everyone else's. It thought the most dangerous species in the galaxy now lay as helpless as the rest. But the codes I had uploaded were not Earth's defense codes. They never had been. I lifted my eyes to Koran's, and for the first time since I had arrived in this hall of singing light, I let my own face show what was truly underneath. Not wonder, not fear. Something patient and hard and very, very ready. "You should know something about my people," I said, and my quiet voice carried across the frozen chamber and out to every world still watching. "We won a war we were supposed to lose. We did not win it by being stronger. We won it by understanding, before anyone else did, exactly how we were going to be betrayed, and being ready for it when it came." Saul stared at me. Koran's grin began, very slightly, to fade. "The council invited us here to join you," I went on. "My people did not believe a single word of it. We knew there would be a knife behind the smile, because there has always been a knife behind the smile. In all of our history, there has never once been an open hand that did not have something hidden in it. So we did not come here to join you." I pressed my hand flat against the core. "We came here ready for the day someone would try to seize it. And the thing I just uploaded into your beautiful crystal heart was not a key to Earth's defenses. It was something we built the very day your invitation arrived, months ago, before I ever boarded the ship that carried me here. We have been carrying it the entire time, waiting for exactly this moment, waiting for someone to do exactly what Koran has just done." The cold blue light of the core began to flicker. "You wanted all the leashes gathered in one place, Koran," I said. "So did we. We needed them all in one place too. It made this so much easier." The flicker spread up the pillar, and the chamber filled with a sound like a held breath finally letting go. The cold blue light wavered, struggled, and began to break apart into 1,000 smaller colors, like a single held note dissolving into a whole choir. Koran's grin vanished completely. It understood, in that instant, that something had gone terribly wrong, though it did not yet understand what. It lunged for the core, both hands out, as if it could push the colors back inside by force. It was far too late. "What have you done?" Koran said, and for the first time its voice was not smooth and certain. It was small. "What did you put in my core?" "Watch," I said quietly. "You wanted to see what humanity was like on the inside. Watch closely, Koran. This is exactly what we are like on the inside." The council had expected diplomacy. They had built a whole hall of singing light to welcome it, and they had meant every note of it. The Vask had expected to win by being the boldest hand at the table, the first to grab the weapon everyone had so foolishly left lying out in the open. Neither of them had understood that humanity had come to that table expecting betrayal from the very first day, and had spent every moment since preparing to turn that betrayal into the trap that would end it. The light in the core changed one last time, and everything Koran thought it had just won began, quietly and completely, to come apart in its hands. You cannot betray people who never trusted you. You can only watch them be faster than you. The program I had hidden inside Earth's false codes was not built to seize the core. That was what Koran expected, because seizing things was all Quran understood. A thief always assumes the next hand at the table is reaching for the same prize. It thought I had simply tried to steal the core before it could, and that somehow my theft had gone wrong. It could not imagine any other reason a person would reach into the heart of all that power. It was not reaching for the prize. My program was built to do the one thing no one in that chamber had ever imagined anyone would want to do. It set everyone free. The cold blue light of the core shattered into 1,000 soft colors, and across hundreds of watching worlds, the leashes broke. Every master code the council had gathered over 1,000 years, every key it held over every member, every switch Quran had just seized, all of it came undone at once. My program raced through the core like water through a cracked dam, and it did not gather the codes into a new hand. It dissolved them. It severed every leash the council had ever held, and the one the Vask had just stolen, all in the same breath. And then it erased itself, so that no hand, not even Earth's, could ever rebuild what it had broken. Out across the galaxy, frozen fleets came back to life. Dark shields lit up again. Silent planetary defenses woke and answered their own people for the first time in centuries. On the relay screens around the chamber, I watched it happen world by world. A fleet over a green planet flickered and turned, suddenly answering its own captains. A ring of defense platforms around a world of oceans glowed back into life, one after another. Hundreds of species who had handed their keys to the council long ago suddenly held those keys again, in their own hands, on their own soil, beyond the reach of any core or any thief, forever. The round delegate with 4 eyes had stopped its grieving and was staring at the relay that showed its own world. The open sky above its sleeping children was open no longer. A wide net of light had spread across it, a shield answering to no one but the people beneath it. The delegate did not cheer. It simply pressed all 4 of its soft hands against the image, as if it could feel the sky through the screen, and it made a sound I had no translation for and needed none. I felt something then that I had not let myself feel in weeks. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter and steadier. The feeling of a long watch ending well, of having stayed awake through the night so that someone else's children could sleep through it. Quran's grin was long gone now. It stared at the core, at the colors pouring out of it and fading into nothing, and I watched the understanding arrive in its round eyes. It had reached for a weapon and found only empty air. The fleets it thought it held were no longer held by anyone but themselves. The leashes it had seized had turned to smoke in its grip. It had spent years burrowing into a thing that no longer existed. "What did you do?" it whispered. "Where are the codes? Where are they?" "Gone," I said. "Not taken. Gone. There is nothing left in that core to hold, Quran. There never will be again. I did not steal the leash from you. I cut it. I cut all of them, every one, at the same time, and then I made certain no one could ever tie them again. Not the council. Not you. Not even us." For a long moment Quran said nothing at all. I watched it work through it. The way a mind built only for taking tries and fails to understand a mind that came to give. It had spent years planning to seize the most powerful thing in the galaxy. It had imagined 100 enemies trying to seize it first. It had prepared for every one of them. The one thing it had never once imagined, in all those careful years, was a hand that reached into the core not to grab it, but to break it open and let everyone go. Such a thing made no sense in the world Quran lived in. In Quran's world, power was the only thing anyone ever reached for. The idea that a person might reach instead for everyone else's freedom was not a plan it had failed to guard against. It was a thought it had never been able to think at all. "You had it," Quran said at last, and there was something almost like awe buried under the ruin in its voice. "It was in your hand. Every fleet in the galaxy, every world. You held all of it. For one moment, you held more power than any creature has ever held, and you simply let it go. You threw it away." "We did not throw it away," I said. "We spent it. There is a difference, though I do not expect you to feel it. We spent the most power any creature has ever held to make sure no creature would ever hold it again. It is the only thing power that large is good for. Anything else you do with it only sets up the next Quran, and the one after that, forever. We were tired of the next Quran, so we ended the chair you were all fighting over, instead of just changing who sat in it." Saul drifted backward, its long limbs trembling. looking from me to the empty, fading core and back. You destroyed it, it said. The whole architecture, the heart of the Concord, 1,000 years of order, gone in a breath. We are all defenseless before each other now. You have unmade us. No, I said, and I turned to face it fully. You have it backward, Saul. The way you have always had it backward. You are not defenseless now. You are defended now, every one of you. For the first time in 1,000 years. Every world out there holds its own keys again. No single hand can switch you off in the dark anymore. There is no core for the next Quran to seize, no central leash for the next thief to grab. That was never safety. A system where one place holds everyone's life was always just waiting for the day someone reached in and took it. The only question was who would reach first, and when. I gestured at the relay screens, at the hundreds of worlds with their fleets and shields coming back to life. We made sure the answer was us, today, in this room, in a way that left every one of you stronger instead of weaker. We did not break your safety. We ended the thing that was pretending to be safety while it was really just a leash that all of you had agreed to wear because someone sang you a pretty enough song about trust. Across the watching worlds, I knew the smaller species would be staring at their own restored fleets, their own woken defenses, and beginning to understand what had just been given back to them. For the first time in their long memory, they answered to no central core. They answered only to themselves. Some of them, I think, did not even know what to feel. They had worn the leash so long they had forgotten it was there. Quran was not finished. Thieves rarely are. It turned away from the dead core, toward the relay points, toward the hundreds of watching worlds, and it raised its voice in one last desperate throw. Do not listen to the human, it called out. It speaks of freedom, but humans bring nothing but war. They won a war they should have lost. They came here pretending peace, and they have torn down the heart of the Concord that kept us all in order for 1,000 years. They are dangerous. They are not like us. They will use this chaos to seize everything, while you are confused and afraid. Look at what it has already done. Strike at Earth now, all of you together, before it. It stopped, because the great chamber doors had opened, and through them came the thing that ended Quran's last hope. It was not a weapon. It was not a strike force pouring through the doors. It was a single transmission, thrown up into the open center of the chamber for everyone to see, both the delegates here and the hundreds of worlds watching through the relays. It showed the Earth fleet. Dozens of our ships arrived at the edge of council space, holding their position in the dark, not advancing, not threatening, not firing, just present, just there, and they were not pointed at the council worlds at all. They were arranged in a long line, a wall of steel and patience, placed deliberately between the vast homeworld and the smaller member species whose defenses had only just flickered back to life. This was the second layer of the plan, the one even I had not been told the full shape of until this very moment, because Admiral Hartley believed that a person who did not know a secret could not give it away under pressure. The single unarmed envoy was true. I had never carried a weapon into this hall. Not once, not ever. But while I played the careful guest and asked my tiresome questions, and let them all call my caution a wound, our fleet had moved quietly into position, and they had come not to conquer. They had come to stand guard over the very species we had just set free, in the fragile, dangerous hour before those species relearned how to defend themselves. I understood, looking at those ships, why the Admiral had kept it from me. If Quran had ever managed to read my mind, to see my fear, to catch me in a lie, the worst it could have learned was that humanity expected a betrayal. It could never have learned that a fleet was already waiting in the dark, because I had not known it myself. I had carried only half the plan, and the half I carried was the half designed to be seen through. The other half, the half that mattered, had been kept in the one place no enemy could reach. It had been kept at home, in the hands of people who trusted me enough to send me in blind, and whom I had trusted enough to walk in anyway. That, I realized, was its own strange kind of faith. Even a people who trust no stranger must, in the end, trust each other. We could not have done this otherwise. Your fleets are your own again, I said to the chamber, and to all those watching worlds. Earth will not touch them. We did not free you in order to rule you. We freed you because a galaxy, where one hand holds all the keys, is a galaxy that will be robbed sooner or later, and we would rather it be robbed by people who give the keys back than kept by people who never give them back at all. Our ships are not there to threaten you. They are there to stand between you and the Vask until you are steady enough to stand on your own. When you are, we will leave. You have my word, and unlike the open hand, my word does not come with a hidden switch inside it. Koran's false helpers, the ones who had moved with it to seize the core, were already drifting backward, away from the delegate they had served. There was nothing left to seize. A plan built entirely on grabbing the central leash had nothing left to grab once the leash was gone. Koran stood alone in the middle of the wide circle, and slowly, all around it, the 6 other delegates rose from their seats. Not in welcome this time, in judgment. Saul floated to my side. Its calm had returned, but it was a different calm now, older and sadder, and far more awake than the gentle thing it had been when it welcomed me home. You knew, it said quietly, so that only I could hear. From the very first day you walked into our hall of light, you knew there would be a betrayal. You came expecting it. We came expecting it, I agreed. You smiled at us. You asked your careful questions. You let us pity you and call your caution a wound and offer to teach you how to set it down. And the whole time you were building the trap that would catch whoever moved first. It studied me with its soft round eyes, and there was wonder in them, and grief, and something close to fear. You came here to be betrayed. We came here to survive the betrayal we knew was coming, I said. We did not know it would be the Vask. We did not know it would happen at the signing. We only knew it would happen, because in all our history it has always happened. Koran simply told us the day and the hour. The rest we had already prepared, long before I arrived. Koran heard the last of this. It turned to me, and there was no grin left on its wide mouth, only something raw and disbelieving, the look of a creature that has just discovered the ground it stood on was never solid. How? It said. How does a people trust no one, not even an open hand, not even an offer of friendship freely given? We watched you for months and we never once saw you let your guard down. Not for a moment. What kind of species lives an entire life like that? Always waiting, always watching, never resting. What kind of species can bear it? And I gave it the answer that is the truest thing I know about my own people. The thing Admiral Hartley had carried in his cold gray stare. The thing every human carries in the second skeleton that holds us up and weighs us down all at once. The kind that is still here, I said, when all the trusting ones are gone. They wanted to put me on trial at first. The Vask did. In the days that followed, they claimed humanity had attacked the Concord, torn down its sacred heart, and thrown the whole galaxy into chaos. It was a clever story. It even held a grain of truth, which is what makes a story dangerous. We had reached into the core. We had unmade the thing the Council called its heart. In an older galaxy, a galaxy still wearing its leashes and singing its songs, that story might have worked. But the leashes were gone now, and a galaxy that holds its own keys thinks very differently than one that has handed them away. Free hands ask different questions. Free worlds are harder to frighten. The Great Assembly was called, larger than the Chamber of the Seven Voices, large enough to hold the speaking images of hundreds of member species at once. I stood in the center of it, alone again, as I had stood for the signing, and I let them look at me, the strange, suspicious human who had broken their 1,000-year order in a single afternoon. I did not defend myself. I had learned long ago that the best defense is to let the truth be spoken by people who are not you. The smaller worlds spoke first, one after another. The species that had spent centuries with their defenses locked inside the Council core stood up and told the truth, as they now understood it. They were not poets. They spoke plainly, and that made it land harder. A delegate from a cold mining world said that the Vask plot had very nearly worked, that for one terrible minute their entire defense had gone dark while their families slept below, and that it had only failed because of the one member who had refused to wear the leash. A delegate from a world of deep oceans said that it had spent its whole life believing the central core kept it safe, and that in the space of an afternoon, it had learned the core was the single greatest danger its people had ever faced, a knife held to every throat at once, and that the human had been the only one in 1,000 years awake enough to take the knife away. One by one they rose, and one by one they said a version of the same thing. The Vask plot had worked almost perfectly. It had been built on the open hand, on the leashes gathered in one core, on a galaxy too gentle and too trusting to imagine a thief among its own voices. And it had failed for one reason only. The strange, suspicious, untrusting humans had been the single species awake in a galaxy that had been quietly sleeping, and our wakefulness had saved them all on the day the knife finally came. There was one moment in that assembly I will carry with me always. An old delegate from a dim and distant world, a creature so ancient that it spoke through a machine because its own voice had long since worn away, asked to be heard last. The whole assembly went quiet for it. It said that it had sat in the council for 900 years, that it had handed over its world's keys as a young delegate, and had spent every year since telling itself that the core kept its people safe. It said that some nights, in the deep of its long life, a small voice had whispered that something was wrong, that no people should ever give away the keys to their own sky, and that every time it heard that voice it had quieted it with the beautiful song of the open hand. It said the humans had not been cleverer than the rest of them. The humans had simply refused to quiet that small voice. They had listened to the thing that frightened them instead of singing over it. And because one species in the whole galaxy had been willing to keep listening to its own fear, every other species still had a sky tonight. Then the old delegate turned its worn machine voice toward me, and it said the only thing anyone said in that whole assembly that came close to thanks. It said it was sorry. Sorry that it had taken 1,000 years and a thief and a stranger from a young world to teach the oldest among them a thing their own fear had been trying to tell them all along. They did not love us for it. I want to be honest about that, because the easy story would be that they cheered my name and carried me through the halls. They did not. Love is not what we earned in that assembly. What we earned was something harder, and in the long run more useful. They understood us. They saw, clearly and for the first time, what the careful, watchful, never-resting human way of being was actually for. It was not a wound after all. It was a watch kept while everyone else slept, and on one particular night, that watch had saved every house on the street. The Vask were exposed for exactly what they were, and they were left alone. Their whole plan had depended on the open hand, on the central core, on a galaxy too trusting to imagine a thief among the voices. With the leashes gone, the Vask had nothing left. A species that builds its entire strength on seizing a central prize is helpless in a world where the prize no longer exists and can never be rebuilt. Koran was removed from its seat among the voices, its followers scattered, suddenly very interested in pretending they had never followed. The Vask were left to sit, small and watched, in a galaxy that now knew precisely what they were, and would never again sing them a trusting song. And then the council had to rebuild itself, and they did it on our terms, because there were no other terms left to choose. The old architecture was gone, and could not be remade. My program had seen to that. No one truly wanted it back, now that they had all seen, in one clear afternoon, what it had really been. So a new Concord rose in the place of the old one, and it was built on the thing humanity had carried into that hall of singing light. Not the open hand, something we did not even have a gentle name for. Real sovereignty. No central core holding everyone's keys. No member required to hand over its defenses to prove its friendship. No single hand able to switch off another in the dark. If the worlds of the new Concord wished to trust one another, they would have to do it the hard way now, the way two equals do it, each holding its own keys, each choosing, every single day, to keep the peace, because peace was genuinely better than the alternative, and not because a leash had quietly removed every other choice. Trust, real trust, would now cost both sides something. It would mean standing truly open to one another, by choice, with eyes wide and weapons in your own hands, deciding to be peaceful anyway. That is the only kind of trust worth the name. The old kind, the kind built on surrendered keys and gathered leashes, had only ever been a slower, gentler form of surrender, dressed in a beautiful song so that no one would notice the chain. The building of it took many days, and I stayed for all of them, because a clause is only as good as the person who reads it 3 times, and I did not intend to let the new Concord be born with a single hidden hook in its bones. The gentle voices wanted to write it all in their old soft language, full of words like trust and harmony and unity. I made them write it plainly instead. Every promise had to say what would happen if it were broken. Every door had to have a way back out. More than once, Saul sighed its tired Eluan sigh and told me that a treaty written by humans read less like a song and more like a fence. I told it that was exactly right, and that a fence was a far kinder thing to leave your children than a song, because a child can climb a fence and see what is on the other side, but a song will only ever tell the child what it wants to hear. In the end, they let me write the fences. The smaller worlds, the ones who had felt their skies go dark, wanted them too. They had learned, in one terrible afternoon, the same lesson my people had spent our whole bloody history learning, and they were not eager to forget it. So the new Concord was built half of their light and half of our suspicion, and I have come to believe that is the strongest thing either of us has ever made, far stronger than the old open hand, because it was built by people who finally knew what the galaxy was and chose to stand together inside it anyway, with their eyes open. Saul came to me on the last day, before I was due to return home. We stood together at one of the long windows that looked out on the 7 gathered stars, the same window I had stood at on my first night, when I was still counting exits and finding listening devices hidden in the walls. "They have offered you a seat," Saul said, "a permanent one. An 8th voice, for humanity, in the new Concord. I suspect you already know this." "I had heard," I said. "Will you take it?" "We will take it," I said, with a clause. Saul made a soft sound that I had come to learn was the Eluan way of laughing, though there was something tired in it now. "Of course. Always a clause. I do not think your people will ever sign a single thing without one, not if you live 1,000,000 years." "No," I agreed. "I do not think we will." We stood in silence for a while, watching the 7 stars turn slowly in the dark. Then Saul spoke again, and its voice was quieter, more careful, the voice of someone reaching toward a question it was not entirely sure it wanted answered. "On my world," it said, "we have a belief. We believe that any people can be healed, that even the most frightened species, given enough years of safety, enough proof that the galaxy will not harm it, can learn at last to set its fear down, to stop watching the exits, to stop expecting the knife, to finally, after long enough, simply trust." It turned its soft round eyes to me. "Do you think your people will ever reach that day, Commander? Will the humans ever stop expecting betrayal? Will you, after enough peaceful years among friends, ever at last set down the second skeleton you carry?" I thought about it for a while. I owed the question that much, because it was an honest one, and honest questions are rare and precious things, far rarer than pretty songs. "I do not think so," I said at last, "and I think that might be the saddest thing about us. We will probably never set it down. We will sit in your new Concord for 1,000 years, and we will smile at our friends, and we will mean those smiles with our whole hearts. And the entire time, some quiet part of us will be counting the exits, watching the seams in the walls, waiting patiently for the knife that may never, ever come." I paused. "It is a heavy way to live. I will not pretend to you that it is not. There are nights it is very heavy indeed." "Then it is a wound," Saul said gently, the way it had said it once before, in a garden, on a kinder day. "Maybe," I said. "But it is also the only reason any of us are still alive to stand at this window and have this conversation. Every species that learned to set its fear down got carried off in the night by something with a kind voice and an open hand. We were the ones who kept watching. We were the ones who were ready when the open hand finally turned out to be holding a knife after all. You call it a wound, Saul. I have come to think it might simply be the price of still breathing." I looked out at the 7 stars. I do not know if those are different things. Perhaps a wound that keeps you alive long enough should just be called a scar. Saul did not answer that. I do not think there was an answer to give. We simply stood together at the window, the trusting one and the careful one, the 2 oldest ends of the longest argument in the galaxy, the argument every species has been having quietly with itself, since the very first one looked up at the lights in the sky and wondered whether they were friends or hunters. I left the next day. The new Concord saw me off with a song, as they had welcomed me with one, though this song was very different, quieter, less certain, more honest. It was a song sung by people who finally knew what the galaxy really was, and had decided to keep singing anyway, with their eyes open this time. Karan watched me go. The Vask were leaving too, under guard, sent home to answer to their own people for what they had tried to do. As I passed the place where they waited, Karan lifted its eyes to mine one final time. There was no grin left on it now, and no rage either. There was only the flat, hollow look of a thief who had at last found a house it could not rob, and had not understood, until far too late, that the house had been watching it walk up the path the entire time, and had left the door open on purpose. I did not gloat. There is no profit in gloating. And besides, I felt no joy in any of it. Karan had only done to my people what the galaxy had always done to us, what we had been taught to expect from the very first time we sailed out among the stars. The only difference, this time, was that we had been ready. That is not a victory to celebrate with songs. It is only a survival to note, quietly, and then to begin preparing for the next one. Because there is always a next one. On the long, slow journey home, alone in my cabin, with the stars sliding past the window, I reached into the lining of my jacket and pulled the thread free one final time. I held the tiny dead drop in my palm, the quiet little device that had carried all my whispers home across all those impossible miles of dark, and I began to compose a new message. It was not about the Vask. The Vask were finished now, watched and isolated and stripped of the only weapon they had ever truly understood. They were no longer a danger worth a single line. The message I was writing was about our new friends, the 6 gentle voices who had wept openly when their leashes broke, and then risen, shaken and changed, to build a better concord beside us. The small, hard worlds that had stood up in that great assembly and spoken plainly on our behalf, our allies, the people who had, in their own slow and careful way, come at last to respect us. I began to catalog their weaknesses, not because I expected them to betray us. I did not. By every sign I could read, and I can read a great many, they were honest and grateful, and genuinely glad to have us at their table. But friendship does not switch off the instinct that keeps a people alive, and respect is a very different thing from letting your guard down. The same eyes that had counted the exits in the Hall of Singing Light would go on counting them, in every hall, on every world, on every single day, for as long as my people drew breath anywhere in the galaxy. That is simply who we are. That is the second skeleton, holding me up, weighing me down, and keeping me alive, all at the very same time. I finished the message and sent it home, one more quiet whisper traveling out into the dark, the first of a great many that would follow over the long years of our membership. The council had expected diplomacy. They had built a whole hall of light to welcome it, and they had meant every single note of their welcome song with their whole, gentle, sleeping hearts. We had expected betrayal. We had walked straight into their open arms with our own hands open, and our minds shut tight, certain that somewhere behind all those warm smiles a knife was waiting, because a knife had always been waiting, in every hall, on every world, since the beginning of our kind. In the end, we were both right. The diplomacy was real, and so was the betrayal. The welcome song was true, and so was the knife behind it. Both things were exactly as real as the other, in the same room, on the same afternoon. The only difference between us, when everything was finally counted, was this: only one of us had come ready.